Get going. There might be a couple more people come in. I'd like to say thank you for coming. I charge a small fee tonight, but as you probably noticed, we're going to donate all that money to the Foundry Kelowna. If you don't know what the Foundry Kelowna is, it's an amazing service in town that is for ages 12 to 24. A lot of the services there are drop-in for mental health, and I've taken my son there, and I just think it's amazing. So we're going to donate about $120 collectively to that tonight. So thank you for paying that small fee. Appreciate it. Tonight's talk is very interesting. This is an interesting subject because it's very personal to me, and as it's mostly men in the room, but we welcome you as well. I'm assuming it resonates a bit with you as well. So there is going to be a little bit of interactive discussion a little later on, but let's start out with, let's turn this on, the questions that brought me personally here. And I proposed in the event description is like, what is my true purpose? Am I the best man I can be? How do I talk to women? How can I be a better partner? How can I be a better father? So those for me were at top of mind about 3 years ago when I started my little journey here. And I wanted to share that with as many people that want to hear it. So these 4 men here, I want you to have a look at the screen there and just think about them. And if you could choose, make a mental note, or there is some paper and a pen on your seat there. Number 1 being who would be your first choice to talk to and interact with. Number 4 being your last choice. Just take a minute to think about who you would want to interact with. This is Ray Romano from Everybody Loves Raymond sitcom. That's Wolverine. Or Hugh Jackman, whichever resonates better with you. And think about why as well. Think about why you would want to interact with those men. So who am I? You came to this talk. I know about half of you. The other half, I don't know you yet. I'm really privileged that you came tonight. Well, I'm this guy, this little guy on this bike in 1980. Really liked my bike then. And I still like my bike a lot. My name is Brandon Archer. I was born in White Rock, BC, October 17th, 1974. So if you do the math, I'm 45 years old. Along my journey of growing up, I had parents, as we all did. This is Scott and Judy Archer. This is relevant to tonight. I'm going to come back to that, though. 5 years old, pretty happy little guy. At 5, you don't have a lot of inhibitions. You're just being. You're just you. You're just little guy on a bike running around. I had a brother and a sister, playing a lot with them. Age 9, starting to get a little more self-aware. I go, all right. I have this thought, and mom and dad don't agree with that. Interesting. Age 13, okay, now it's getting challenging. Puberty's hit. I am changing in my body and my thought process. Don't always agree with my parents anymore. So much to in my story anyway, age 17, I'm like, graduate high school, I want out of here. I want to go. I want to discover myself. A lot happened after high school. One of those big things was getting married at age 27. Young? Maybe not, but it was part of my pathway. It felt right at the time. Age 29, bought the house, had kids, because that's what you do, right? Isn't it? Pretty sure that's what I was taught anyway. And then this happened. Divorce. Didn't really see that one coming. It was a few years later. I was 35, but that's all right. Bumps in the road. After that is when things really started getting interesting. Age 38, I suffered a severe concussion. I dodged a bullet, really. That could have gone the other way. I could have been dead just as easily. You probably can't see it in that photo. Oh, you can actually. My ear, almost lost my ear. Woke up in the hospital, didn't know what happened, didn't know where I was. And the time after that, about 6 months, was pretty challenging. I couldn't speak properly, I couldn't see properly. I didn't know, I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? How am I going to move forward in life? Recovered from that, back into the workforce, away you go. Then I had another one, heart attack. That picture, it's either the day I had the heart attack or the day after. It's competitive cyclist training. This was in April, really fit that year. I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. I drink a little bit, eat quite well. So the doctors were like, what? You shouldn't have had a heart attack. We don't know why you had a heart attack, but I did, it happened. But it's just part of my story. It's just part of what happened. So that started a journey that landed me here today. But age 42, I actually got to fulfill a dream that I had when I was 17. That is, when I was 17, I wanted to be a professional cyclist. My particular situation with family was never going to happen, but I did say to myself, if I ever got the opportunity, I am going to I'm going to take down all the barriers I can for young people to fulfill their dream to be a cyclist. So what I didn't realize started happening is I was fulfilling my dream through providing a local cycling club that allowed some kids to fulfill their dreams. So that's Jacob in the picture. He is 16 in that picture. I knew him when he was 12. Little guy, he's as tall as me in that picture. He went on to win the Canadian National Championships in the time trial, which is you ride your bike as fast as you can for 40 kilometers, and there's a winner. He went on to represent Canada, which is the jersey he's wearing, at the World Championships. So in a roundabout way, I fulfilled that dream that I had when I was 17. There is a reason that's in there. So age 44, last year, I found my true purpose in life. So these two guys they're different versions of the same person. And you may be able to relate to that in your life. But they're not the same man, which is why we're here today, is to talk about masculinity and what it means to be a man. So one thought that because he did all the things, meaning get married, have kids, buy a house, that was fulfilling what it meant to be a man. But the other guy, at age 44, explored masculinity and discovered what it actually means to be a man. So what does it mean to be a man in 2020? It's kind of a big question. When I first posted this talk, I had quite a bit of interest in it because it's not a question that gets asked. And I think the reason for that is we go through the same process that I did, which is you graduate high school, you go on, and just by age and the years passing, that becomes your manhood. But is that true? Well, we're all sitting here today for a reason. We're asking that question of ourselves. Before we go any further, though, I want to talk about the last 100 years in Canada. Do you know what year women were allowed to vote in Canada? I just found this out today, actually. 1918. So just over 100 years. And why I bring that up, it's going to make sense in a moment. I was also doing a little research on what's a generation mean. Some of the research I did say a generation is 30 years. Some it was a little longer. So if you take 30 years, it's roughly 3 generations since society has said, women, we acknowledge you. You're allowed to vote. Before that, men or the male sex kind of dominated things. 1918 in Canada, anyway, we realized maybe that's not actually a good thing, and we made some changes. So everybody knows what a pendulum is. So we're over here, men kind of dominating, not giving women a voice at all, and we let the pendulum go. It went over here, which we'll talk about in a minute. I want to bring up tribal society, hunter-gatherer society, and how the pathway to manhood, there was one. So you all probably know it, but let's just review it quickly. So a boy is born, a child is born, and they're taken care of by their mother. Up till about, I'm not sure the specifics, we're gonna say age 12. And then the men or the hunters would come in, and quite often in a very elaborate ceremony, the men would take the boys and take them out into the wilderness. They'd be a hunter, and they'd be initiated into manhood. There was a definitive process that happened. So I shared a little bit of my pathway, which was I graduated high school, and apparently I was a man already. But is that really what happened? So these guys again. Anybody want to share who they chose and why? What was your number one? Jim?
I chose Picard. I thought, he was a guy who was pretty cool things. He's a smart guy. He'd be very interesting to learn from and relate to. You want to know by the other guy?
Yeah.
The bad guy is Bunker. Bunker, funny TV show, but what a personality. The guy comes across as bigoted, kind of stupid, just very hard-headed in his ideas, inflexible. Not the type of guy like gang.
Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I had the same. But at first I was also drawn to the Wolverine Hugh Jackman character for different reasons than Art. Didn't know how to put my finger on that right away, but I think it was an element of the fire that he brings, which is something more calm and intellectual. But I kind of value both of those versus the two at the bottom, which I value less.
Ollie?
Well, Picard, because, like, okay, brightest guy in the room, learn something. But I have sympathy for Archie. He was a good guy. He was faithful to his wife. He worked. He supported his kids. He talked like a racist, but he wasn't, because his next door neighbor was a black man, and they became good friends. And I'm just saying that for that time, Archie, was like my father. Okay? He ran off at the mouth and everything else. He never laid a hand on his wife. In fact, she ran the home. Okay? She was the real power. So I'm just saying, Archie was not that bad of a guy.
Interesting. Anybody in the room that is a father of a son who, if you could choose who would take over your duties as a dad, which guy would it be?
I'd like Picard, but with a sense of humor. Because the one problem I have with Picard is no lightness. So I kind of like Hugh Jackman. I think he'd be a better choice.
Interesting.
I've never watched any of the Wolverine movies, so I don't know his characters.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman, and just that energy for life. I think it would be great to instill in kids.
Interesting.
I feel like they're missing that today.
So why did nobody pick him?
I've never seen his show, so.
You're not missing anything.
That's why. He's a clown.
Right.
That's my impression of him. Like, he's a funny guy, but he's a clown. He's not really taken seriously by anybody in the house.
thoughts on these characters?
I'm drawn to Picard as well. I'm going to watch Wolverine now because honestly I've never seen the series, but Picard is a man of integrity, and he has the capability of making very difficult decisions under pressure and making them well, trying to do what is best for all.
Uh-huh.
And I really respect that about him. So the integrity piece is.
So, out of how far we've taken the discussion so far, who would you rate as most masculine?
I would still say it's a mix between Wolverine and Picard, right? They bring two different total aspects to the masculinity.
Yeah.
Wolverine is pure, like rawness, and Picard is an incredible leader, very thoughtful, but when it comes time to action, he can still pick up a sword and slice the head off if he needs to, right? So like it's an interesting mix when you ask a question, who raised my sons? Be like, did they co-parent?
Yeah, 2020, that's possible, right?
Interesting that the new Picard series shows all of the probability and all of the mistakes that he took every decision where he actually did show leadership. People died, millions of millions. So it's very interestingly complicating his character now.
Hmm. So the question we have to ask is, how do we learn how to be men in 2020? Trial and error. Anybody else? Story.
Our fathers.
Yeah, I'd say there's guidance from father.
I'd say my friends had a huge influence.
Even when you were younger? Yeah.
I think we pick role models. Like, my father was an anti-role model.
Mm.
So I picked like school teachers or scoutmasters or, scout leaders or whatever, other men that was around me. And my father was, if you really screw up, then you're acting like your father.
So I hear a constant theme of somebody modeled it for us. Is that right? Did these guys do some modeling for our modern society?
Sure.
Was it a good thing? It is complex. It is complex. It's very complex. So, I'd like you to, there's paper, pen, there's blue and there's pink, so you use them as you choose. There's no judgment here. Write down some masculine traits on whichever color you choose. Masculine traits, as many masculine traits as you can think of. And I'm going to give you a fair bit of time because I think some of them start to come the longer you sit there. Do it individually for now. let's switch it to what are some feminine traits? So there's two cards. I gave you two cards, so either backside or other card if you choose. Okay, let's go to your masculine list. So I've created a bit of one here. And the thing is this list it's just the first ones that popped into my head, but I'd be very curious to see past this list what you have. So some for me, confidence, responsibility, logical, direction, focus, integrity, capable, clarity, protective, assertive, certain, discipline, courage, dominant, competitive, confrontational. The bottom three are arguably not great. Anybody have anything to add to that list? Integrity.
I put clarity of thought at the top of that list.
Security. Courage.
I put that at the top.
But adventurous.
Adventurous.
Leadership. Teacher, student.
Add fighting.
Fighting. Yeah. But that's true. That's a masculine trait. Absolutely.
Self-identity.
Pardon me?
Self-identity.
Self-identity.
I'm going to say loving as well.
Loving. Okay.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Stoic.
Stoic. I like that one.
Solitude.
Solitude.
Pathetic.
So this list could be 100 traits, probably fairly easily, if we go deeper and deeper. What do you have, Ollie?
Everybody missed one. Sexual.
Sexual. Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly is part of.
Yeah, you can't deny that. So let's switch to feminine. Again, I have a list. It's not exhaustive by any means. Understanding, nurturing, kindness, creative, sensitivity, emotional stillness, tenderness, selflessness. Yeah, I spelled that right. Humility, contentment, perseverance, affection, compassion, patience, empathy.
Why could we look at it as everybody has
Ah.
a masculine list? What's wrong with, is there anything on the masculine list that women would disagree with?
No, but
I
that's
think they would disagree with a lot of their fluff.
where we're going with it. But that's where we're going with it. Hang tight.
Okay.
Any feminine traits?
Caregiver.
Caregiver, yeah. determined.
Compassionate.
So, as a male, should you only have these attributes? So why do we call them masculine then? And why do we call these feminine if we can have both as men?
We all have masculine and feminine.
Right?
We all embody that.
Right.
To what level?
So as a society though, if you're a man, historically, I'm not saying today necessarily, I'm saying the last 100 years, which was more accepted as you're a man. Would a man do many of these things in the 1950s, 60s maybe?
I hope men would have humility.
I 100% agree, but we're talking a little more macro right now, at the moment, right?
They probably did do all that stuff, just that it wasn't portrayed that way.
Yeah. Or how about boys don't cry? Who got told that? Stop crying. Suck it up, be a man. Who heard that one? Yeah. Why though?
That's what their dad said to them.
Yeah. And was this list more important to them maybe?
I think it's what we used to model, right? If you watch the films, you can see a clear stereotype.
Yeah. Totally. I really like this slide. There's a ton of stuff going on here, but we got time, so let's go there. So as I'm researching this, as I'm like watching the interweb, there's a ton of talk about toxic masculinity and what that is and why women are just shunning that. And I think it's an important subject. We're not going to go too deeply into that today. But like Ollie started to say, this here, that's male and female. There's no sex assigned to those traits necessarily. But what I will say from my experience, I was taught to live in here. And I had a really hard time figuring that out because it wasn't modeled for me. So while we had Archie Bunker being a bit of a jerk, remember the pendulum? Pendulum was up here, men really hard. Whoa, and then it swung over here. I got the end of like, oh, we got to be really nice to everyone. But it's caused me personally some issues in life because I lived in here and I didn't know how to do that stuff. Does anybody have the reverse experience? Because I know there's people out there that do.
A little bit more the other way.
Does anybody resonate with my experience? Yeah, so about half the hands. Did you always think, I know for me, it's like, I really want to do those things, but I don't know how to do them. Because my dad didn't know how to do them, and I knew my grandfather fairly well. He didn't know how to do them. But I was like, there's something in me that just wants to like say the thing that I'm supposed to say, but I'm scared because I might offend somebody.
And when we struggle like that, then
Then
the bottom list comes out.
the bottom list comes out, and these things start showing up. And actually on both sides, right? It's just the energy we have in us. It's not, at this point, it's not determined by our sex. Has anybody had the experience where women in their lives have more of the healthy masculine traits than maybe these?
Yeah, my first wife was very strong.
Yeah. Any ideas why?
She identified with her father, loved him to bits, preferred his company to her last.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
There's a lot of social pressures for women to be strong. I mean, let's face it, as women step into the workforce more and more and take on, particularly corporate, the workforce, and
right? They have to be decisive.
to be decisive.
They have to have assertiveness, confidence, strength in order to be in that world.
And that really pushes the masculine traits and the feminine to come out.
Yeah, for sure.
Big way. We're also seeing that play out in Hollywood in no uncertain terms. All of the superheroes that used to be masculine become feminine.
So what do you think about the pendulum? Men, jerks over here, hard. It swung. Men got soft, women got more masculine.
Everything's in balance. Right?
Yeah. Do we collectively kind of like, yeah, that makes sense? They filled the gap. Energy's there. There's space there. Somebody had to fill it. I have a lot of respect for women. I think they're smarter than us by a lot. And they just went, okay, you're not going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to step into it and own it. And they have. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is just what's happened over the last, we're just going to use 100 years for now. So I don't know about you, but I want to be a healthy, balanced human of integrity, power, wisdom, and love. I don't like that. That doesn't appeal to me at all. So what the hell is modern masculinity then in 2020? Because I was pretty confused. Because we've talked about, men being too soft. What's the other side? What's too hard? So I'm going to share me growing up, being the nice guy, being like, oh, I'm such a nice guy. Why wouldn't women like this? Because that guy's a jerk. But what I didn't realize is they had these masculine attributes. And because my brother, I'm going to use my brother because that's pretty intimate to me. And he's kind of a jerk. But girls just flock to him. I'm like, what is going on? So the feminine energy is attracted to the masculine energy. It didn't matter that maybe he was a little, I wouldn't say he was in here, but he had these more than I did. I had these more than he did. And I just didn't understand what was going on at the time. So then I graduate high school and I still see this phenomenon. I thought, it's like, wow, guy's such a jerk. Why does she like him? I'm so much nicer. But what I didn't understand is I wasn't in my masculine energy at all. I lived here. And there's value in that. There's totally value in that. But I had no balance. I wasn't in here at all, which is really where I wanted to be. So what is it? Anybody want to chime in now?
I would say appreciate and admire the differences between men and women. Also recognize that we are completely equal in everything, except men can't have babies.
Yet. Science is coming along really quick. I don't want to have a baby.
But that the men's room or the men's group is still around, and it does not want to have women in there in the group, or at least as equals. They will maintain one or two token women in their group, but that still exists. If you go to any large industry or whatever, upper tiers is basically 90% men.
I think it's probably shifting very quickly. I had an interesting good friend is like, who was smarter in school, boys or girls? The girls always kicked your ass in tests, generally. The tech revolution, what does it matter if you're male or female? Maybe in some of the politics, definitely. But you said something about we're different. We're different but equal. And I agree with you 100%.
We are different, and we have to try to understand that and appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So how do we embody this?
It's a learning process.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think we need to. I don't think we need
Yeah.
in today's social media and news cycle that's 24/7. I mean, but to embody that is to really be true to our core of who we are.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's an aspect to it. It's why we put up the slides of the TV characters. We were modeled to a certain degree, well, not to a certain degree, basically 100% how to be a man. And it looks a little bit different for all of us, but there's a bit of a theme. And you touched on the social media and the social perception of what it is to be. But how do we get back to? Take that out of it for a second. How do we get back to that? And I speak from my experience because that's what I have. And I was soft. I have zero problem admitting that. I didn't have those masculine traits. So again, how do we learn how to be men? For me, this was it. I got modeled how to do it. So I watched my dad, pretty soft guy, get steamrolled by my mom. I think she just filled the gap, really, like somebody mentioned. I think he didn't know how to assert himself and be decisive in all those aspects we talked about. So she just stepped into it, like, I got it then. And he just like, all right, you take it. Plus all the other men in my life. So some of the men in my life are those TV characters. So I'd watch Wolverine. Well, I mean, that's a little more adult life, but Picard, I'm like, he's kind of a badass. Like, he doesn't let anybody tell him shit. Like, he just does what he thinks is right, and he does it. But at the time, I didn't know how to step into that. I had Archie Bunker before that, being an asshole. And I don't want to be that guy. You had some good points, Ollie, on what he did do right. But as a 12-year-old, I didn't see those things. And Ray Romano, like, come on. Like, what's that about? I don't really know how that got into TV.
Let's add Homer Simpson and Family Guy to the list.
100%, right? It's been around for over 20 years. So who did it mold on how to be a man?
And I think you brought this up early on, some months back, where you just look at the ads and how stupid men are often depicted in ads. And the women are the smart ones stating the obvious, but the guys are just, like, what is that about depicting genders that way? And is it just strictly for the laughs? Because there is an underlying message there that might be affecting people in the wrong way. If they don't get it overtly, they'll get it some other way. That message keeps getting hammered home.
Well, I think there's a couple things there. Is marketing people are really smart. So they're trying to relate to the person watching it. So if we collectively as men feel like that's the role we fill, and we see an ad, it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what it's supposed to look like.
Fair is if they're that smart, if they see that.
Yeah.
But I'm not arguing.
It just fuels it, yeah.
It feels like a dopey, emasculated man.
Yeah.
Because I don't. And I think those ads don't portray masculinity at all.
They just make a guy angry is what it does. Me
And it relates to somebody out there.
Yeah, that's my point, is there's a reason they're doing that. And what's the reason? They're not dumb. So, well, you guys feel in your masculine power, maybe 70% of the population doesn't. Otherwise, they wouldn't do that. They would, or it's an agenda.
My theory is, I mean, they also, advertisements, let's face it, they're looking for money, right? They want somebody to buy something, and they know that the majority of the women in the household make the buying decisions.
Good point.
Men, so they're trying to appeal to the women. And if they denigrate the man slightly and lift up the women, then, they're appealing to that.
That's a good point.
It's a good point.
Maybe you guys are too young to remember this show. Leave It to Beaver.
Oh yeah.
That was like the perfect
Watched it.
male and female. Like, they were like flawless in their image and role. Like, it was quite the role model.
Definitely the roles. Yeah. Yeah. I never thought to go back to that, but I'm going to have to think about integrating that. So, again, I can speak from my reference point, right? And the men I've talked to and my role modeling. and where it landed me. And this is where it landed me. Nice guy. Too soft. I was indecisive. I was codependent, overly sensitive, overly emotional. Avoided conflict. Like, you better, yeah, I don't want to have a conflict. No way, that's not right. Seeked approval from people in my life, male and female, and gave way too much, because that's like, oh, that's what you do. That's how you're a good person. There's another aspect to my life and growing up that influenced that. But I've also seen a lot of men get stuck in here. How many people relate to that one? So roughly half. Here's the other side. I'll say my brother, but the guys I watched growing up, I'm like, what is up with these jerks? Aggressive, critical, controlling, dominant, confrontational, unsupportive, compulsive, boastful. Anybody have one of those in their life at some point? Or multiple?
The other half of the time, I'm not that one.
Sounds a little large.
But that's a great point. Two sides of the coin, right? It's like, are you so question, answer it if you like, or if not, were you happy being either?
No, because it isn't either. It's the pendulum is swinging too much.
Yeah, right?
With us, we're trying so hard to find that balance that we swing between those two.
And society is too. So women can vote. The reaction was, oh my God, we've suppressed them forever, and we've taken our masculinity, manhood, whatever you want to call it, way too far. Let's just let the pendulum go and see what happens. Oh, we got all these baby boomers and Gen X. I had to look up what I was today. I'm a Gen Xer, that are maybe too soft. Where is the middle? Because we haven't really been modeled the middle. Maybe Picard, maybe Wolverine, I don't know. I think Wolverine's a badass, and if you watch the movies, he actually has a side that's compassionate to him.
So on a macro level, that pendulum swing from toxic to sensitive is very apparent in
Yeah.
generations. But on a micro level, even between different women that you date, have relationships, sometimes that toxicity that you exhibit is a result of their behaviors, or that sensitivity that you might exhibit.
That's a whole nother talk. I love that you're opening that up, because I'm like, I could take this talk so many ways, and I'm trying to keep you. I agree with you. That goes to a whole nother aspect of us as men. But if that's your experience, that's great to share, because, yeah, is there people in your life that all of a sudden, oh, fuck, you know, I'm going to be aggressive towards you because you just triggered something in me. So, again, I have to make sure that I reference my perspective of masculinity and being too soft, and what was my journey. So I honestly believe, I know every man has this burning ember inside of him, knowing he wants to maybe be more. He's not quite happy, but doesn't know how to step out of that and change things. I felt it. Those questions at the start were like, those are questions I asked myself, because I don't know what to do, but I always knew I could do more. You know, I wanted to be the guy that was decisive, assertive, but it was modeled to me as negative. But I know that if, as societal men could figure that out, I'm going to assume, and I have to make an assumption here, that a majority of the men are too soft at the moment in Western culture. I'm not going to take in the rest. But what if we could all light this fire, this ember that I know is glowing in us, I know it's there, I've watched it, and turn it into this fire that is healthy masculinity. Meaning, I'm okay to step into my power as a man, and it doesn't mean I have those toxic traits. It means I am assertive. It means I'm all those healthy ones. So I believe sticking on the theme with the talk that modern masculinity equals healthy masculinity, which is what? I believe it's these things, minus the toxic stuff. I believe it's balancing these things, which equals this, acknowledging and cultivating both of those traits in us as men. It means maybe breaking down some barriers that these things are, not acceptable. I do believe it's shifting. 2020, it's shifting definitely. I meet men my age though that they won't touch this. They don't want to have anything to do with that.
Like you talked earlier of tribal man, where the youth was taken by the men, who basically taught him and gave him the rules on how to be a man.
Yeah,
That was a great advantage to a large extent.
I agree.
We don't have that today.
Nope.
Nobody ever told me of violence, sexual behavior, and that kind of stuff. Nobody ever talked to you about that. And you see people daily, people you thought were so successful, and then in certain behaviors, their whole lives just ends.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up the tribal and then tried to parallel a little bit with the TV. So I have a son. I'm guilty of it. Give him a device. Here, watch this show while I go do my thing, instead of maybe modeling how to be a man. Right? I mean, I've since tried to reset and do things a little differently, but there was advantage to the tribal, which is why I brought it up. There was a pathway. You get born. You're 3, you're 5, you watch your older brother be taken into manhood, you're like, oh, okay, that's what it looks like. That's not clear anymore. There isn't one. It doesn't exist. But what I see happening is more men are interested in what does it mean to be masculine or a man, and it will change. I really hope in my lifetime I see it change. So let's say I'm halfway through. I hope in 45 years this discussion looks completely different, because we've embraced it. So there's, a dozen of us in this room, and in my opinion, it's now our responsibility. We have a little bit of knowledge. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with it? Well, we got to do something. Can't just sit here and do nothing. So I think it's as simple as we live it and we start modeling it, because that will ripple out into every aspect of our life. Women, our children. You have two daughters, right, Steve?
A son and a daughter.
So, and I know the changes I know you're stepping into it. So now their expectation as they look for a mate when they're in their 20s will be that. So the individual effort we put into this is how I think it's going to change. It doesn't start with, I've had people like, you need to do stuff with teens. I would love to. I think that's cool. But if they go home and their dad's still a disaster, how's that going to help? It's my feeling anyway. I know there's no...
They'll be able to recognize.
They will.
And it'll give them a chance.
But I also know the pain that I can see in men. What if each of us had 2 sons in the room, and I can talk to a dozen people and help and get them on a path? We now just affected how many people? What's the math on that? 36 people. We have a responsibility as parents to do that. I agree with you. They would recognize it. But what if we just teach each other how to do this?
Even in that realm, not just as parents, but as people of influence, right? So if you go coach a softball team or something.
Yeah.
Anyone that has that influence over
Coworkers.
Yeah.
They'll be like, what's going on with you, man? Like the meeting 6 months ago, you just sat there and the boss kicked your ass verbally 6 months previous, and you stood up to him in a respectful but assertive way, and he went, you know what, you're right. And they'll notice that. And they'll ask, how did you do that? And then they're gonna wanna know more. So that to me is what modern masculinity is embodying all those. I mean, the list is much bigger, but there's a list for us.
It kind of means routinely, like with your computer, you have to run a virus scan of your brain and check your, what's in there. Like certain words today, we know not to use. We have deleted them. And there's so much that we continually have to kind of revamp, look at it, and say, is this who I want to be or want to believe, or like to run that scan through your thought process and your belief system.
Absolutely. And like I alluded to, is like, how the heck in an hour do I say what I want to say? Because there's so much, and we could go deeper. I'm trying to give kind of a macro view of things. That's a whole hour talk right there.
Right.
Like easily, right? Like, how do you go deeper into that? How do you, model for your teens how to masculinity?
I feel like something else that's important is I feel like the health of our population has declined.
The what, sorry?
The health. And I feel like guys in particular have been affected. And maybe that's affecting the amount of energy we have, which might affect our ability to step into the role that girls are now filling.
I agree with you. So I brushed over my heart attack, but talking about energy. So the energy I was carrying with me during that time was a lot of stress and not like trying to fulfill this ridiculous role that I thought was a man. And my body went, that's enough. Like, I'm gonna kick you in the face right now and you need to stop that. I agree with you, but there comes a point where we just need to own it. You just need to go, yeah, this sucks, but I'm gonna step into it anyway, because that's the right thing to do.
Totally.
To your point about maybe negative energy, I found that if you want to have healthy masculinity, for me, it feels like you can channel that energy into clarity of thought, directiveness and decisiveness of action. That's really what it feels like, even if it's negative energy.
So Phineas, right? That was your name? Do you feel that?
Yeah.
You do, right? Do you want to turn it into that? It's doable, man. And the other energy in your life, I get it. I do. I've been there. You just need to go, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I feel like the energy that I'm talking about is like a lack of energy, like a loss of vitality. Yeah. And I feel like I'm a lot older than you, but I resonate with that too.
Yeah, it makes sense.
At the same time, it may be that the energy you need is available to you when you step into what it is that
Thank you, Jim.
discussing.
It's not easy. Not going to say it's easy because we've been conditioned or we've been told, let me share this idea with you. We've been told by people that don't want to see us step into this, it's too hard. Don't do it. And why is that? Maybe it's because they can't do it and they don't see a way to do it. I know for a fact every person can. There's no doubt in my mind.
Some of our top role models, like the United States has Archie Bunker for president. Canada has a,
He's kind of too soft, probably.
yeah.
So you're just feeding my theory.
Yeah.
By look at our role models.
Right.
Sorry, Reed.
No, I just have a question. Do you think it's important that slide at the end there has masculine traits and feminine traits?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's important to have gender-based traits?
No. I think it's weird. This could be, why couldn't this be called red traits and blue traits?
Well, I guess what I'm just wondering is why can't we just have human traits? Why do we need
I think there's an aspect, a primal aspect to us as human beings, the way we're wired. Like, think about the tribal things we talked about. They were wired that way, right? And I'm not saying that evolution is moving us away from that. I'm not. I'm saying I think currently we are wired close enough to that it makes sense. I believe like you're in the next 50 years, this could be like thrown out. I wouldn't surprise me actually. but it's just a reference point we have for now. And it resonates with enough people that it's like, oh, I get it. I understand what that means. Yeah, no, but that's super cool.
I only ask because I read recently that there's as many people that are born without a defined physical gender as there are redheads.
No way.
So to think about that, like I know 3 people that are redheads. How many people do I know that have had a stereotypical gender associated to them?
Yeah.
That would see this and be like, why do we
Totally.
sexualize
But
traits?
that could be the evolution of humankind. Like I believe in that stuff, man. Like I think that's cool. But in our current, where we're at, this resonates with 99.9% of people. Fast forward 50 years, maybe it's 99%. Fast forward 100 years, who knows, right? We won't be around. Well, maybe we'll be around to check that out. It'd be pretty cool to watch what happens next. So I think that's an hour because Gene had to jet there. Yeah, hour. Wow, we could talk for another hour. Thank you for coming. This is a big subject, and as we saw, we kind of all wanted to take it like different directions. And when I was writing this, I'm like, oh man, how do I talk about this on a macro level? But it may, out of the interest, it may work into workshops or something, because I think people want to talk about this more. I really do.
I think the way you manage this with the broad topic is what creates the conversation.
Uh-huh.
And so kudos to you for doing it in that way.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I just want to start the conversation. That's it, and see what comes out of that. Because I know I sat for decades in the corner by myself, not talking about these things I wondered about. And I'm like, how do we get this going? Can't talk to my dad, he doesn't know. Like, he just doesn't know. It's not his fault.
And we come at the subject from very different directions, like where we are tonight, how we dealt with it. If it was a group of women from Me Too movement,
Yeah.
there would be much more anger and hurt in the discussion. They would come at it quite differently.
The anger is probably justified, though.
I'm not arguing.
Yeah,
Okay?
I know. It could have been very different.
And that has to do a lot with our lack of teaching or how to behave and morals. And they have been the victim of a lot of that.
Don't disagree with that.
Another hour-long discussion.
Endless, actually. There's endless possibilities where to take this. I know a 3-hour meeting that happens every week. So thanks, guys. I don't want to take up any of your time if you budgeted just to be here an hour. I do facilitate a men's weekly group, which some of you guys are in it. Yeah, half of you in the room are, but we've never actually breached this subject, I don't think. Yeah. In a way. I also do one-on-one coaching, and I'm working on different workshops. So thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. If I can answer any questions outside of here, my card is on each seat. Thanks so much for coming. Easy to fill. I thought the time would be hard to fill.
No, yeah. You said we could talk for endless.